This is the creek as it flows through the neighbor's place, who's across the road from us. It's the beginning of the second week of May, and we are a couple of days past the peak water flow for the spring runoff melt for this year. I just finished spending majority of the previous week installing the pipes and repairing the driveway on his other access point down creek from here. With the water beginning to subside, we're able to begin repairing this second access. And the first thing we have to do is open up the flow so that this water doesn't back up like it is and spread out quite so far. So I'm going to try to make sure that we get the main channel flowing good, and then we can start cutting in a diversion channel so that this can dry up enough that we can bed down the pipes appropriately. I also need to get across the creek so that I can make my way upstream and open up the channel so that it stays where it needs to. That flat muddy bank was completely covered with water during the peak of the run. As the water has to meander through the switchbacks of this creek flow, it would shoot out and across that muddy bank and make its way up onto the floodplain without actually working around the corners and down into the pipe. Eventually, that saturated the ground enough near the pipes that they simply floated up out of the water and came loose. So one of the key factors to repairing this driveway is prevention. I need to make sure that this water will channel and flow through the appropriate way and not bypass the pipes, flooding the area and causing a problem in the future. That's going to include increasing the elevation of the banks on the uphill side of the pipes to make sure that it helps stay channeled, and then we're also going to line those sides of banks with rocks to make sure that it has a good erosion control. But before we get too deep into anything, we got to get this water channeled and diverted so that I can dry up that bed and get the ground appropriate for a pipe to go in. That might take a couple of days of sitting in between. This access originally had 2 of those 3-foot diameter steel pipes next to each other in the middle of that creek with about 6 or 8 inches of pit run on top. Because the creek is not that far from the road and it drops substantially in elevation, his driveway was over 15% grade with just pit run, so any amount of moisture made it almost impossible to get out, even in a 4-wheel drive truck. So we're going to try to fix that as well. He happened to have an extra 5-foot diameter pipe sitting by the wayside near his first driveway. That one had, originally, a single 5-foot diameter pipe, and this one having the 2 3-foot diameter pipes. We decided to rearrange them and put a 5-foot and a 3-foot in each driveway access. Since the other driveway hadn't fully washed out, we left the 5-foot pipe where it was, and dug in and installed the 3-foot pipe next to it at a little bit higher elevation to kind of act as an overflow pipe. During the peak of the runoff this year, when the water was at its highest, that 5-foot pipe in the other driveway was able to take all the water. It did nearly wash out though, because the bank on the inlet side was not shaped appropriately and didn't funnel the water together. That's why we put a little extra effort to build up the bank all along the side, even as far back as 20 feet from the creek. So we're going to do the same with this access as well, and try to build up those elevations so that there isn't so much of a floodplain along the sides of the road. And then because we're going to a 5-foot pipe and a 3-foot pipe on this driveway, we'll be able to build up the road surface elevation so that it's not so steep coming out. It's been a day or two since we first diverted the water, and he was able to get at least one load of heavy pit run delivered out so that we had something to work with to begin bedding down and setting the first pipe in. Because we're trying to bring up the road elevation so that it's not so steep coming out of here, we decided to put the 5-foot pipe closest to the road and the 3-foot pipe farthest to help with the ramp's transition. As you could see, I still had a little bit of water coming through that diversion bank, so I just kind of had to work with it and make a nice flat bed for the pipe to lay in. With it initially bedded down, I needed to bring down some good material that was dry and a lot more fine so that I could pad up a nice little soft spot for that pipe to sit on without any big rocks protruding up that would poke into the pipe. This driveway access was already installed before my neighbor purchased this property, and he never liked it from the beginning. So I guess in some ways, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. This gives him the opportunity to get it fixed the way that he would prefer to have it, since Mother Nature did all of the demolition work for him.
Chattanooga, boy, had $1 and a dime. Headed out for Nashville on the Hard Rock Line. I'm working on that old steamboat and I learned to rob and steer. When my feet had touched dry land, how happy I did feel. Been saving every penny for to make up through the fall. Working for that dollar, but it never adds up at all. Coming around the riverbank, heard the old train whistle sang. The very next thing you hear from me, I've been tied to a ball and chain. Well, come this time tomorrow, reckon I don't know where I'll be. But if it wasn't for that old sheriff, I'd be back in Tennessee. Playing cards and crap games, not looking for the score. And if I ever get back home again, I'll never own no more. Gather round, you good time boys, listen to my song. May not know better, but I know you know right from wrong. Buy yourself a postcard so you can see the lights of town. Find yourself a country girl, keep quiet and settle down.
This one load of heavy pit run was the only material we had to work with at the time, and we had rain coming, so some delays in getting more material delivered. Over the next 5 or 6 days, we were able to get 3 to 4 loads of this other pit run delivered that looks a lot more like a good road base. So I came over and spread out these loads to get them packed in and set and make room for the other 4 to 6 loads of road base still yet to come. It would allow the driver to back up much closer to the pipe when dumping the loads. That way, it would help also compact the road as he drove in and out. We didn't know it at the time, but it ultimately took about a week to get the remaining loads of material delivered out, just because of the road conditions and the rain that we had this spring. That was the beginning of a cycle that lasted about 3 or 4 weeks of something along the lines of rain for 2 days, mud for 3 days, dry for 1 day, and repeat. I had a couple of time-sensitive projects on my place that were also delayed because of the conditions. So between those two factors, it ultimately ended up taking about 5 or 6 weeks before I was able to get back to finish this road with the materials that were delivered. We finally caught up with a few things that needed to get done, and the weather's been good enough lately that the creek is pretty low. So today's the day I'm going to go down and finish up the second driveway for my neighbor across the street. We did the first driveway earlier this year, the first week or two of May, right as the runoff was pretty well taken care of and we were down to just the flow in the creek. Now the flow in the creek is drastically reduced and is down to just what it normally is this time of year, which is just a small, even flow. We spent a few weeks there waiting for both the road conditions to dry up enough that it wasn't a muddy mess and for materials to get delivered. He had 10 truckloads in total delivered out to his place of a pit run from a local, and we got 8 of it down here by the other pipe to get installed. He's got 2 loads of it over on that first driveway that we're also going to spread out as a more finished cap on that road. This particular pit run has got a little bit more fines in it and some more jagged crush rock kind of shape. So it's going to compact into a nice road base a little better. So we're going to skin coat that first one with a few inches of that and get a little bit of a crown shape to it and compact it with the roller, as well as go down and try to get that second pipe installed on the second driveway and finish getting the approach ramp and road built over the top of him that has to drop in to get over to his campsite area there. So that's what we're going to do today. It's pretty astonishing to see just how low the creek actually is from where it was. Now this is a lot more like it normally looks. Usually we have high water for about a week, maybe 10 days, and then it recedes to this flow, and it flows like this all through June. Typically, by the first week or so of July, it's down to just a trickle, but never fully goes away. And it's safe to say that our high water is typically never more than what it was when I first started to bed this pipe down about 4 or 5 weeks ago. All of us up here came out of this winter with very little real damage to much of anything, but we definitely all got a much, much broader view of what's possible up here and have a much different perspective of what we need to be prepared for just in case. So I know I speak for myself when I say that this summer, as well as likely the next 1 or 2 to come, will be spent improving our systems and fortifying the weaknesses in them. That's pretty well got this driveway wrapped up. There is some room for another load or two if needed, if he chose to, but for now it's in pretty good shape. He does want to do some modifications downstream from here, and we'll see how that goes later this summer. Now I just have to spread and compact the last 2 truckloads on the other driveway. Okay, that's wrapped up. We got the road base cap on all this. Packed down nice. I just finished rolling this driveway and my last pull, and I think my forward and reverse fork inside my transmission has come apart. All the linkage all the way down into the transmission shaft, the shift fork shaft, just flops back and forth, and I get no activation to forward or reverse. So we're gonna have to come back with the truck and tow it out of here, and guess it's gonna have to have a visit in the shop pretty soon.